All right. Good morning, Geauga County, Lake County, northeastern Ohio, and all those places around the world where people are choosing to stream us on Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. We've got to work on our YouTube channel. Our Facebook channel is coming up. A lot more people are starting to watch us on Facebook, listen to us.
Yep,
And the
welcome all.
Rumble channel, of course, is pretty active. Although people are just getting their coffee, I'm starting to see people show up on the channel. So good morning to everybody in our social media channel, and good morning to everybody that's out there listening to the radio, 101.5 or 1330 a.m. If you want to take part in this program, you can call us at 440-946-9468. I've got that memorized. I did that off the top of my head without having to look at my cheat notes.
Nicely done.
So you're listening to Skip Claypool and Jonathan Broadbent, and
Good morning, all.
we're going to be talking. We're going to kind of continue the election wrap-up conversation from yesterday, um, but I'm going to add a little bit of a twist onto it and say, look, wake up, Northeastern Ohio, wake up, Geauga County. We had an election. Elections have consequences. They're very important because of the impact on our lives, and we kind of do it as a um, it's kind of a lot. We take it seriously for the day. We're all excited about whatever candidate we happen to be supporting, and then we go vote, and then we go home or go to work or do whatever we're going to do, and we kind of forget about it. It's kind of like a lackluster. We don't really are not too concerned about what happens after that. We kind of think that, well, what control do we have over all of this? But really, when you think about it, there's a huge impact on our lives. We ought to be a lot more involved. I don't know why we don't spend more time on it watching the Browns lose yet again, or the Cavs and the Indians. And I know they're not called the Indians, but I still call them the Indians. And
Yeah,
so
me too. But I
I
heard the Cavs are doing well.
that's what I understand, but I don't watch. I don't care. It has no impact on my life whatsoever. The sports teams have zero impact on my life. I could care less who these multi-million-dollar prima donnas are doing. And yet, our elected officials and what they do day in and day out have a huge impact on our lives. We ought to be,
True.
starting some sort of a league-like focus on our county commissioners, our township trustees, our state representatives, and start scoring them and cheering them on and doing things because they impact our lives. I mean, our taxes are going up, our
Yeah,
affordability. People are saying we have affordability issues. I'm just saying, people, you got to wake up. You got to take more control over your life and get more aware of these people that we elect. Some of whom are not qualified, who are impacting our lives. And so that's all. I mean, I'm just saying, wake up, and we're going to talk more in more detail about why I'm talking about some of that.
isn't
But
there an expression there, Skip? Give them bread and circus, something along that line. If you entertain and amuse people, then they'll stop paying attention to the things that really matter. You put you in the era of ancient Greece, they would put on these big Olympics. As soon as there was some uncertainty or uprising among the public, they would create a big Olympic event to distract people from what was happening in politics. And I think to a large extent, it's still kind of the same. It's still going on
well, that's
in
the
today's
Coliseum.
society.
You're absolutely right. They would distract people by having people kill each other and let them go focus on that. And so that was a distraction. You're absolutely right. That's what politicians like to do. They say, "Look at this shiny thing over here," and distract you from all the stuff that's really going on that impacts your lives day in and day out. So we're going to talk about a little
Well,
bit of that and the outcome of the election. I'm
yep.
I'm I'm pretty pleased for the most part with the outcome of the election. I think the right people got elected, and we'll hope and pray for better things as a result of that. I'm a little disappointed in some other um, election results. I don't think we're getting the results that we should expect at the federal level, um, and that's across the board. I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but we could talk more about that. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the election. I think I was
Yeah,
there watching the election process, and I went to each of the polls, many of the polls, and kind of talked to people while we were there. And people take that seriously, and so I'm happy about that part of it anyway. And I know.
a couple of good comments, Skip. Somebody has posted, humans are easily distracted. But there's another really interesting post. Good morning. Jim Renacci apparently has written something of interest on his Facebook page regarding Dems flipping to Republican for this election. I want to key in on that for a moment because that's a major, major known issue, particularly in Geauga County. For some period of time, we had supposed Republicans, many of whom have a lifelong history of far left progressive liberal Democrat bona fides. Um, that have openly called for and ask for Democrats to cross over and pull Republican ballots in order to neutralize any potential representative government. So as soon as another, I'm going to put that in another way. As soon as somebody starts to show up as a strong advocate for we the people, it's it becomes easy in an environment where you have two different hoppers of voters to pull from to eliminate those people. You can get rid of them by getting a whole bunch of Democrats to cross over, and frequently they become the outspoken, question asking, very assertive person who might go in and sort of bang on the podium and advocate for we the people. Those are the types of people that make a big target, and often we see in Geauga and throughout Ohio the call for Democrats to pull Republican ballots to make sure that those people don't get in office, they don't get elected, and that's really unfortunate. That's what's neutered for the to a very large extent. It's neutered the Republican Party by keeping strong people out of the Republican Party and out of positions of representation. So we should call that out and be aware of it. Thank you for that post, Nana.
So yeah, I was just, I mean, somebody and I were, there was a person and I were yesterday having a conversation about the election outcome, and congratulations to Abby and to Steve, and we'll see where Joe DeBoff's race goes. 4 votes. Can you believe 4 votes makes the difference? I mean, don't tell me that an individual vote doesn't count. And I can tell you,
Yeah.
I got Joe DeBoff more than 4 votes because people call me and said, "Who should I vote for?" And so I would say my preference is Joe DeBoff. I don't tell them who to vote for, but my preference is Joe DeBoff. And that was more than 4 votes. And so each of us individually can have a huge impact on the outcome of an election. We got 4 votes, and so we're going to go through this recount process that's required because of the how close the race was. Plus, right now there's 66 provisional ballots. Provisional ballot meaning there was something wrong with the individual who, not the individual, but something wrong with the situation when they were voting. Either they didn't have their driver's license, they were at the wrong polling location, there was
Mm-hmm.
some issue with their voting status, whatever. There's some issue, so they were allowed to vote, but the ballot was questioned, and so the board will sit down, review the each ballot individually, and then they'll make a decision whether it's going to count or not. So there's 66 of those, and on the 20th, I will be there watching and observing that process to make sure that it's fair and so forth.
I
But
hope a lot of people show up for that, Skip, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And I imagine that there's a tremendous amount of pressure, probably some legal wrangling. I'm envisioning probably a team of lawyers, and maybe some of them are ne'er do wells, who are hovering around that issue, trying to figure out ways to put their thumb on the scale and engineer the outcome that they want. So it's going to be up to people like you, Skip, willing to go in and be an observer in that process to make sure that everything is done on the up and up.
yeah, and
I
I
hope.
will do a shout out to our board of election here in Geauga County. I have serious concerns over Cuyahoga County's board of
Oh yeah.
election, but I think here in Geauga County, and I've been involved since I moved here. 20 plus years ago, and our board of elections is pretty good. I've never had trust issues. Well, there was a period. I had trust issues in the board of election with either side. I mean, I will go to the Democrats in the board of election, and I trust them 100%. And so I don't really have an issue. There's one Republican and one Democrat for every situation, and
Good,
I think we've got a good board of election.
good. That's
The
good to
people
hear.
that work there are good, honest people. They have differing ideologies. Okay, that's the way we
Yeah,
work.
that's the way it should
But
be. Might differ on stance on issues, but if people can get into a position like running a county board of elections and maintain professionalism, that's key.
yep,
And that I'm really glad to hear that you also have had that experience. So that's going to be the day, right, on the 22nd. So Skip, is it scheduled for the 22nd, or it needs to be done by the 22nd?
no, it's going to be scheduled for that. For that, and you said the 22nd. I thought the 20th, but it's going to be one of those
Oh,
2 days. And
one of
so,
those 2 days.
yeah,
Okay.
and so I just saw the notice that we're going to coming up on the break. But
I just
yes,
saw that as well.
it's one
So
day, and they'll go through all 66 provisional ballots and make decisions. So at the end of that, then there will be a recount. In
a
addition to
recount of
that,
right.
of the
So we're
entire.
we're coming into a break. We're
So
going to come back with more on this topic and others on the other side of the break. Oh boy. So Thomas, we've got a choppy microphone again. I'm getting part of what you're saying. I know we had a little bit of an issue yesterday with the mic. I think we just need to stay aware of that for verbal cues. I'm going to work between the visual cues. Thank you again for doing that, and hopefully we can square away those microphone issues. Sharon says that she heard the 22nd as well, so we need to just firm up
yeah,
that
I'll
date.
verify that. Yeah, I
Okay.
was called by the Board of Election because I submitted my name to be a formal poll observer, not just somebody who shows up. And so I'll be formal. That gives us a little bit more authority. I can go look at each of the provisional ballots and do some other things.
Do you
So
know, Skip, is there a limit to the number of formal observers that are permitted?
there is a limit. Uh, it is, they don't want 20 people in there, but they can
Yeah.
they can have 4 or 5 people. So today is the deadline. If you want to get your name in there, let me know, and we can get your name submitted to be a formal poll observer. Or
Where can we look? Because I think it makes sense to put a call out. Where can we look for the date to confirm if it's the 20th or 22nd?
just
Beth says I just verified on the website. It is the 22nd. Not
okay.
sure of the time.
There you go.
Okay.
So
So yeah,
I stand corrected. So,
yeah, I wasn't sure. It's just 22nd was in my head.
it's the second
Fifty-fifty
time this
chance.
year I've been wrong. So
Good, good.
the first time
So,
I thought I was wrong and I wasn't. So
oh, what did you show up and they're like, wait a minute, we don't have you on the guest list.
no, I was having a discussion with my wife.
Oh, gotcha. All right. So, yeah, I think we should do a call out. See if we can get more people there, more good sets of eyes.
Well, it's open to the public, so the public can always show up, but the public will be sitting out in the audience, so to speak. Poll observers have a little bit more latitude.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. You're listening to WINT Radio. Dial in at 440-946-9468 or find us online on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube to join the conversation. I learned during the break that we have confirmed the date that those provisional ballots will be reviewed and considered by the County Board of Elections. It appears that is, in fact, on the 22nd. There is a limit to the number of people who can go and serve in a formal role as an observer. And today apparently is the deadline to get your name into the hopper to be to fill that role. Skip, I think he said that the limit is 5 or thereabouts.
Yeah, I don't know
Beyond
if
that,
I don't know if
we're
there's
not sure.
so.
We're guessing the limit, but there will be a limit to the number of formal observers. However, it is open to the public, so anybody can go. The difference is the audience will be probably a little bit further away, seated, and not able to. How did you put it, Skip? I think the observers have a little bit more latitude in their interactions with the board as those are reviewed. So that's something worth considering. If you can take a little bit of time on the 22nd to go and keep an eye on things and make sure everything's on the up and up. That would be good. Extra sets of eyes are always good. I want to pause to recognize the sponsors of today's episode. We have both the Chardon and Middlefield VFW. Thank you, veterans, and the American Legion of both Chardon and Newberry. Red Eft is also a sponsor. Dial up Red Eft at 440-850-4968 and ask them to come out and take a look at your yard. They're arborists. So that is going to be a big day, Skip, on the 22nd to make sure that that those provisional ballots are tallied correctly and the right person is put in that office. The auditor's office is a very, very important one.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why a provisional ballot may exist, and some goofy things go on from the provisional ballot standpoint. I mean, actually, I observed when I was a poll worker not too long ago, somebody actually intentionally came in and tried to vote in a provisional ballot, um, and they got caught cheating, and they ran out of the polling location. That was down at Bainbridge at the library. And so we had to go through a formal process to discard that particular provisional ballot. But so there are some goofy things. Some people just by mistake either show up at the wrong polling location, or they don't have a driver's license, or their signature doesn't match, or some goofy thing that raises a question on their ballot. And so they make a provisional ballot so that the Board of Election gets a chance to review it. But
so it gets singled out for review.
They get singled out for review, and then and that's good. There's a formal process then to judge whether or not it's a good ballot or not a good ballot. And so the candidates generally have poll watchers there, or observers, and the public can have a poll observer there. And so so we'll see how that goes, and it's going to be critical because this auditor position is very important to our county. And let me talk about or make a point to people. I was having a conversation about our elected officials yesterday because they're so important. And somebody made the point, and it never really clicked with me before this conversation, that we don't really have a Geauga County representative. We have a representative out of Ashtabula County, state representative out of Ashtabula County, that represents Geauga. But, you know, having their finger on the pulse of Geauga County, really looking out for Geauga County specific issues and so forth, there may be some question as to whether that's occurring. Same thing with our county was broken up. We've got the left-wing liberal wackos who wanted to redistrict. I went through the redistricting hearing process and was not impressed. I was very upset with our governor and with our Secretary of State because they were just allowing this goofy save the democracy crowd to steer the whole meeting. And we have this goofy redistricting where the southern part of Geauga County has been broken off. It's been put with Portage County now. And so, you know, how does Portage County representative represent Geauga County? Again, same question. And I like Steve Demetrio, who's the representative of that area, but what does he really understand, and how much focus does he spend on Geauga County specific issues? This Vic Sandu just was elected in the primary, and Vic Sandu is actually from Twinsburg. And so you got to ask the question, how much, at one time, our county was its own district. So we had representatives from Geauga County. Tim Grindell was one of those. He was our state representative for a long time. Diane Grindell was our state representative and state senator for a long time. we had people who lived in Geauga County, who understood Geauga County, who were our representatives. That's not the case today. And so that's a little that just raises questions. That's I'm not casting aspersions, but I look at the other part to this equation from a state representative standpoint is you look at what the folks who represent us are focused on. And Steve Demetrio, I did a quick assessment, is looking at doing blockchain, um, cryptocurrency. He wasn't, he submitted a bill, involved with a bill, the Innocence Act, which is a criminal justice reform legislation, trying to reduce the requirements of e-check. He wants to support manufacturing innovation, but Sarah Fowler's whole focus is primarily education. She did some work on aerospace protection and recognized maple syrup as a agricultural item. I guess for Geauga County, that's probably important, although I'm shocked that it was not agricultural. But the question you have to ask is, are those our highest priorities? Right now, we're having this huge discussion and debate over property tax, which has a huge impact on each one of us. And our state representatives don't appear focused on that. And we have all these other issues in our counties. And maybe we had to get together with Ashtabula and Portage, since we're sister counties under this situation, and start talking about what's important to us, because it doesn't appear our state legislators are focused on what's important to our communities. And I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe we ought to call them over and have a conversation with them, because
Well, it's been my experience, and actually Sarah Fowler Arthur has been on this show, and I have personally communicated with Steve Dimitri about being on this show. Both are very open, and both have proven to be very accessible. So I want to give my perspective. You're right. I actually don't remember where Steve Demetriou lives. I've met with him several times and find him to be very open and accessible. And same thing with Sir Fowler Arthur, who, as I said, has been a guest on this program. So, and I'm picking up what you're putting down, Skip. This is not to cast aspersions on those two or anybody else. It's to say we as a community in Geauga County, if Skip is right, and many times Skip has said, we are in kind of a bubble almost. There's just a beautiful element to living in Geauga County. And there are lots of fights and battles to maintain that. And you've heard me use the expression before, don't Cuyahoga our Geauga. All of that goes to how and with whom we fight those battles to try to keep out things like the high density multifamily housing units and those kinds of things. And that goes to Skip's efforts with Geauga County Metropolitan Housing Authority. All of that stuff goes to how we are represented and with whom we enter those battles. And it's a worthwhile conversation to talk about where they live. If anybody knows where Steve Demetriou lives, where he calls home, I think it factors into the conversation. Again, we're not bringing these things up to cast aspersions. I actually happen to like both of them. It's just asking the question about perspective and willingness to go to bat specifically for Geauga County. That's where I think you're headed with that, Skip.
yeah,
If
I mean, and I
might,
look at this Vic Sandu. He's an Indian guy, and he lives in Twinsburg. So what is his connection going to be to Geauga County? What's he going to focus his attention on? As a guy that isn't even born here in the United States, um, I've talked to him. Seems like a decent guy. Um, Claims to have Republican or conservative values. And by the way, this Ohioans for Responsible Government, this dark money, cowardly group that hides behind a nonprofit and a PAC, they're trying to change politics in our county.
they are.
And they made an effort to do that. They had some impact. They attacked me. They attacked Jonathan at the Central Committee level because they want to change politics.
They actually,
and so
we covered this yesterday. They appear to have had one success, which is actually my race. And I've got some new information to share on that. We are going to come back on the other side of the break with more conversation on this. We do have an answer. Steve is actually in Bainbridge, which puts him actually geographically in a sweet spot, covering his territories and just below the lower southern edge and very, very close to Geauga County. So geographically, where that may matter, he is well positioned. But we are going to come back with more conversation. We've got more to share as we unpack the election results from 2 days ago. I remember I spent the day, some of it holding an umbrella in the rain, meeting with people. I've got some insights and things I'd like to share. We're going to come back with more on that on the other side of the break.
All right. Are off, mics are off.
You know, we might want to talk about our congressman and what he focuses his attention on. I see his newsletter updates all the time. I'm on his mailing list, and if it's not the lake or some anomalous veterans event, and he does that for political feel good, I think. Outside of that, what's he focused on for Geauga County?
Are you talking about Joyce?
Dave Joyce, yeah.
Yeah, I think I was getting his newsletter. I get so many emails. I've like a category. I put things that I might choose to look at. It's kind of like a Microsoft's other category. You've got focused and then other. I think that I get his newsletter, but it's been a long time since I've looked at it because I'm so frustrated with Dave Joyce and his voting track record and his positions on issues. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he's really does not have much focus on Geauga County, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, we should be. I mean, I like Steve Demetriou and I like Sarah Fowler. I've supported them for a long time. I'm happy that Steve's going to go to the state senate because he'll have a little bit more power or more opportunity. But if you look at what the legislative agenda is, generally speaking, across the board, it's very lackluster, and our taxes are going up, and it doesn't seem like the legislature, generally speaking, not picking on any two individuals, like the legislature even cares about people.
Well, that goes to the whatever efforts we put into building a good team within the Republican Party. Whatever we build, it's kind of like you go back to Moneyball and the Indians of the '90s. We got there as that team, that incredible baseball team, because we put so much time and energy into building a franchise from the ground up. All those farm teams that cultivated talent. Remember how it's so frustrating for years because we're not a major market. Our players were were lured over by the major teams, White Sox and Yankees, etc., is because we had so many rock solid, excellent, strong players. If we treat the Ohio Republican Party that way, in a very short period of time, we could have a rock solid, very good Ohio Republican Party. Right now, it's mostly garbage, just with a whole bunch of really, really bad, rotten people in it. It's because we let that happen and we let them stay there. We let them stay there because there are people that love effectively buying those slate cards. They're buying access, buying the endorsements by just showering money on a few people or a small location or whatever. I've heard it in Lake County. There are people in Lake County who just love Dave Joyce because, to my understanding, that Dave Joyce comes out of pocket to fund the county GOP headquarters. Well, that's not an answer. If you ask me, I would rather have a county GOP headquarters in a cardboard box if it meant we have good representation that defends us and works in our interests. But this whole notion that, whatever it is, and it broke up a little bit. Say that again, Thomas. Are we at 30? Can't hear him.
You can send us a chat message too, Thomas.
Yeah, I don't know if that was. I'm getting. Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and Jonathan Broadbent. We are uncovering and unpacking the election results from 2 days ago. Before we went to break, I was commenting that 2 days ago I actually went personally and stood outside the voting location where I vote. It was a tremendous opportunity to meet with and talk to, pardon me, a broad array of people. There were a few that went through with a huge chip on their shoulder. Just a few people. There was one guy who was dead set on trying to start a fight with me over Trump because he was just gunning for anybody who identifies themselves as Republican and just instantly right out of the gate,
His name
just
wasn't
beating him.
Stu, was it?
Oh, I should have asked him. Maybe it was Stu.
Yeah,
It could be.
anybody who's anti-Trump is Stu, right?
Yeah, we just call it. That's a term that we'll use now. Stu, you're
No
going to be
basis for that, no facts that you can defend, but
right.
go ahead.
Well, right out of the gate, this guy, his comment to me, because I was talking about the Republican Party candidates, and said, he said that he was there to vote Democrat, and I said, well, unfortunately, I don't have answers on that side of the aisle, but thanks for stopping. And then he went further and kept trying to engage with me, and very quick, right away, I forget exactly what the premise was, but he just announced that I'm racist, and I said, well, that's not very nice, and it's not true. And I said that that's a political tactic to try and engineer conversation and try and sway votes, but it has no truth to it. And you just met me, so you can't come up and approach me and call me racist. Uh, and it's I politely said that I would expect better from people in public discussion. And then we parted ways, and apparently he went inside and did the same thing to people inside the voting location. Anyway, there's something came out of that I wanted to interject yesterday that was a really cool moment. And that was a conversation with Ellen Naylor, who is on the West Geauga School Board. I happened into some conversation with Ellen, and she told me her perspective and her role on the school board for West Geauga. And this gets to everything that we're talking about with our elected representatives and what they mean and what they do, how they behave. She made the comment to me that when she first went, there are people that serve in that position who don't look at it through the lens of the public interaction, the public perspective. And she sort of spouted off the top of her head sort of this hypothetical meeting where, a lot of people just want to run through and rubber stamp. And they're like, okay, next item on the agenda is 3401.2, and that is the moratorium on the such and such. All those in favor, all those opposed, aye, and they stamp it. Okay, next item on the list, that's item number 448201 and whatever. And she said, even when she first got elected and got there, it's bewildering and maybe even intentionally. And so one of the things that she and some others on the West Geauga School Board have tried to do is slow things down a little bit and try to interject for the public, for the audience, for anybody listening. What does it mean? What is that thing that they're voting on? Put it in lay terms and help people to understand it. And as she was describing that, I was flashing back to the number of times I've been in the county commissioners' meetings. I'm actually trying really hard to make it a point to follow these things and read the agenda, but it is typically once a week, Tuesday mornings. It's the same thing. It's like 3 pages of item number 4802-01, and somebody goes through and it says, $600,000 for this, and it has to do with the renovation surplus millage, whatever. It takes even me, who's focused on this stuff, some time to drill down and process that. If we have good people in those positions, and I applaud Ellen Naylor for making those kinds of efforts and having the capacity to look at it through the lens of the community. Those are the taxpayers that go and show up to those West Geauga school board meetings, and many of them are parents and grandparents, and they care, and they're listening in because they want the best. So please, if you're in that sort of position, at least sometimes look at it not from the perspective of how fast can you get through the meeting and rubber stamp as many things as possible, but what does it look like to your listening audience? What does it look like to the community? And can you possibly interject for their perspective what the thing is that you're actually voting on, especially the ones with big ticket dollar values attached to them. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw that in if to spin us in a new direction, but to me, that was a spectacular comment made by a woman who clearly cares. She's a new school board on West Geauga, and I truly, to my core, wish that more people that got into elected office felt and thought the way that she does.
Yeah, I mean
What do you think,
the
Skip?
new West G school board is pretty good. Um, there's another gentleman that was just elected, and their mindset is very refreshing, and it goes along the lines of Ellen Naylor,
Hmm.
and the chairman of the board, who I know pretty well, is also of that mindset. So they're trying to change the approach, and somebody should talk to Carolyn Brakey about that, and maybe get a change on the county the board of commissioners. When I was a county
Yes, please.
commissioner, I attempted to do that. I would try to specifically with certain items. I mean, there's some administrative things that are just routine, and you go through them to get them off the docket because for the most part, it's paying a bill or taking care of some maintenance item or something. But I would try to stop and explain to people in the audience what was going on, and I was accused of being of showboating. And so
Of
the
course.
other elected officials didn't like it when I would point out that the sheriff's office was, doing something or whatever, or the prosecutor's office was, getting a new thing for VOC, and nobody understood what VOC was all about. And so I would try to explain to the audience, but then I got accused and vilified for showboating. And so, it's
Oh boy.
unless the board, generally speaking, you make a cultural change on the township trustees boards or the county commissioner boards or whatever to make a concerted effort to explain to people. I wanted to, as you were talking, I was thinking about what Brian Massey has done with Lobbyists for Citizens. If you look at all of the state legislature, anybody that goes down to the state legislature to meet with representatives, and I've done that a number of times, I've testified before both the House and the Senate on topics, on issues. If you go down there, there's a constant flow of lobbyists from various groups. First
Yeah.
Energy's lobbyist will be there, or some manufacturing lobbyist, or the County Commissioners Association lobbyist. There's a constant drumbeat of people going in and out of the offices of the state legislators trying to sway their opinion. Who is
And
down
teachers
there?
unions.
Who is down there representing the people, representing
Right.
Geauga County? And in Geauga County, we're a very diverse community, so we ought to probably get together as a community and decide what our number one top 10 priorities are, and then come up with a lobbyist group. Maybe Voice of Geauga can do that, where we would be
Yeah.
the voice of Geauga, and we would create a lobbying group like property tax, and just make that the number one priority, and go beat the hell out of these state legislators. Go from state legislator to legislator to legislator, and start trying to sway what they're doing. Because right now, much of it's fluff. You can look at what the docket is down there, and it's just meaningless stuff that they're doing and not focused on the citizens' priorities. And too often we're not representing ourselves. We're not taking part in the people's to have a people's voice. And maybe we should be thinking about that.
Yeah, there's a comment here from Gardens of CH that is, we need a citizen agency to be before county commissioners. And it's unfortunate. You'd like to think that you could walk in there, be heard, especially if you're a large group, because that happened a few weeks ago. There was a large group there. I think I counted 24 people that came in and spoke on a topic. And it was after the 24 people, two of the three existing commissioners made muttering comments. Can't we limit public comments? And then just rubber stamped the issue anyway, and worked against the very outspoken public interest. So, yeah, there is ample opportunity there. But Skip, I have a question, and this is maybe a little bit hyperbolic, but do you think it's possible that some of these government agencies, some of these offices, and maybe even our current county commissioners make it look ugly and confusing so that people get confused and have a distaste and ignore it? Because if that's true, go roll with me on this for a minute. If you can make an office, if you can make those meetings unattractive and uninteresting and confusing, then people will stop paying attention. And if people stop paying attention, that's a great opportunity for waste, fraud, and abuse because you can just roll things through and rubber stamp them. Going back to those comments made by Ms. Naylor, if they're just rolling through, we got $63 million for item number for 842-201, whatever. Okay, yes, rubber stamp, boom, and people are there like just trying to catch up. It's almost like listening to one of those auctions where you go there and the guy's so like super fast talking. You're like trying to process what it is they're even saying, and before you know it, the $6 million for this and $400,000 for that and $3 million for this and then they're like, okay, meeting adjourned. And that's how we get to astronomically high taxes with sometimes very little return on that investment. We're coming up on a break. You can join the conversation if any of this resonates with you at 440-946-9468 or join us on social media, Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. I believe I covered our sponsors, but I'm going to briefly do it again just to make sure that we cover them and get them recognition. We've got Red Eft at 440-850-4968, American Legion, and the VFW. We're going to come back with more on the other side of the break.
I think the mics are off.
I think the mics are off. Couldn't hear.
If not the
So-
people out there in Radio Land, you can hear us banter along with the social media crowd.
Yep. So Gardens of CH asks, how many agencies or departments does the county have? We need our own with a budget. We need something more than just making public comment. They do not care. We need to force them to address us. Wouldn't that be lovely? I mean, to pay their salaries, many of them very large salaries with golden benefits all around them, and then they seem to want to immediately try and hire in family members and their buddies and like old college roommate and stuff and hand out these salaried employee roles like they're candy as if money is free. So at some point we should talk about reining that in and addressing the waste, fraud, and abuse and the lack of focus on the interests of we the people. We absolutely should.
Yeah, I mean, their website lists a number of departments, some of which are not departments. There's a department on aging that's a county department, but it doesn't fall underneath the auspice of the
30
county
seconds.
county
30
commissioners.
seconds.
There you go, and you got a clear mic, Thomas. That's great.
Yep.
The
Thanks,
maintenance department, the airport authority, the planning commission. These aren't really departments per se. The planning commission is a separate entity, actually, that has its own separate authorities. But there's basically a number, and there's agencies that aren't listed here, so or organizations. So
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. We are spending another day unpacking the election results from 2 days ago. And I want to interject an interesting observation that I've made. I work in finance and have a background in working with numbers and looking for anomalies and interesting statistics and behaviors. So I look for connecting dots. That's led to some really interesting things throughout my career, like uncovering waste, fraud, and abuse and calling things out. And I think that may be a large part of the reason that mine is the only race, the only county central committee race that was targeted by that malicious, horrible group, the Ohioans for Responsible Government, very misnamed. By the way, 2 days ago, as I stood there in the parking lot, meeting people and interacting, I did have both my opponent and his compadre, young gentleman, looked like a college-aged kid, handing out fake slate cards from Ohioans for Responsible Government. So that's who I spent half of the day facing. We did manage to keep things moderately cordial, but knowing that he is working with, has worked with, and is hopped in bed with Ohioans for Responsible Government, I decided to look through the lens of Geauga County Central Committee elections. And here's some interesting numbers. And Skip, you may be interested to note this. Of all of the county central committee races, and again, there are 79, right? We're at 79 right now. There's 79 possible races, and there are 41 in the county of Geauga where somebody ran. Some people were unopposed, some people had opposition. Adding those up for the precincts in Geauga County that had somebody running, the average number of votes for central committeemen was 129. The county precinct, the largest number of people voting for central committee member, happens to be mine by a very, very large margin. So on average, Geauga precincts saw 129 votes that decided who the precinct committeeman is. And my precinct, it was 244. 244 people voted in Newberry A, which is the precinct where I happen to currently represent. So it got me wondering where, and by the way, that difference is by a very, very large margin. It's 41 votes, 41 additional votes to the second place, the second most voted precinct. So that's a heck of a lot of activity in my race in particular. So that sort of stands out. That's a starting point. The connection to Ohioans for Responsible Government, that's that group that put in dark money to create a fake slate card that came after me. They once that mailed that hit piece postcard against me, against Skip Claypool, against Ralph Spitaleri, and against Steve Olowich. So those are the group that somehow, interestingly, managed to align themselves with only one out of those potential 79 different races. And that happens to be a place where there are vastly more votes. So anyway,
Well,
that's a starting point.
and
If
that
you'd like
group, by
me to,
the that group is out of Lake County. So if you're from Geauga County and you paid any attention to that slate card whatsoever, and you're listening to this program, wake up. You're allowing a dark money organization who hides behind a PAC and a non-profit corporation to influence Geauga County outcomes. And
but
so it's
the
just so.
funny part is the funny part is apparently it didn't, because out of all the money, and what was it? Who knows? We don't know yet,
Oh,
because the final
tens of
reports
thousands
aren't
of
out. But
dollars,
it's
I can tell you.
tens of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, and they appear to have affected exactly one race in Geauga County, and that's mine. And if that's the case, I am delighted. I am thrilled beyond belief, because first of all, everybody that pays attention to the things that I've been doing to try and train people to actually be better representatives on County Central Committee, I've been doing it for 3 years nationally, and mentioned frequently on like things like Bannon's War Room. Dan Schultz is a personal friend of mine. We've been working hard for years and successful from Maine to Georgia, Florida, Hawaii, California, Iowa. We've been training the nation to make better precinct committeemen and have better county central GOP for 3 years. This group is not going to quiet me. Don't worry about that. But if they put that kind of money in, and that's the sum total of their result, they missed on the judges' races. They missed on the county commissioner. And if me no longer having that small volunteer role at the county is the total of all the money they spent, I am just delighted and laughing.
We screwed up.
That's
We
my
should have put
position.
you in the voice of Geauga because I think the voice of Geauga was able to neutralize their nonsense. But let me make a point.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the election results across the state, and this is a point people need to think about for future elections. Of the people that won, Keith Faber was uncontested for the attorney general. Keith Faber is one of those position hoppers. He's just a political guy that goes from seat to seat. He's going to be a lackluster attorney general. You know, he's going to do there. He's a conservative guy. He's going to stand up mostly for conservative stuff. But he's not an exciting guy. He's not going to make change. Not going to be an agent for change. He's going to go in there and pound himself on the chest for being a great attorney general. Frank LaRose, who's been a lackluster Secretary of State, is now going to be our auditor for the state of Ohio. So he just shifted seats.
Yeah, musical chairs.
Robert Sprague, we had an opportunity. Ohio had an opportunity to put in a true agent of change, Marcel Sturbridge. You know, an Air Force veteran, had a lot of energy for ensuring election integrity. And instead, we're going to get Robert Sprague. Again, I mean, I don't have anything animosity against Robert Sprague. He's a nice guy. He's got a line of bull a mile long. But he is not going to change anything in the Secretary of State. If we call down to the Secretary of State and say, hey, we've got election issues, and I can give him specific examples, he's going to say, oh, yeah, thank you. And nothing will change. Nothing will happen.
Yeah.
So we're not voting for change. We're voting for the same people that are just shifting seats, giving us the same outcomes. And people, we got to wake up. I mean, that's real. I started with this. We got Jay Edwards now for the treasurer of the state of Ohio. Now, the treasurer is just it's I don't want to say meaningless. It's an important position, but it really doesn't have much power outside of tracking our money, to keep taking care of the money. We could have had Christina Rogner, who is a very solid conservative individual, great integrity. Instead, we have one of the Blue 32, one of the guys
Blue
that
22.
got the Democratic Party in control of our speaker at the State House. And so we elected absolutely the wrong guy, in my opinion, to that treasurer seat. And it's just going to be, if the track record holds, he's now going to move to another seat in the next, when he turns out of this particular situation. And so we've got to start paying attention to the people we're electing. And maybe people like Voice of Geauga should do a better job of creating a scorecard so you can see who it is that you're voting for. We have to have opposing candidates so that we can test the mettle of some of the people that are running, because the outcomes we're getting at the state level are just not acceptable to me anyway. And oftentimes, even at the local levels, races, we're just not getting the kinds of people in there that we need to really look out for. Lowering our taxes, for goodness sakes, getting rid of property tax, replacing that with something more responsible, more transparent, less complicated, less costly. It costs us $800 million a year just to manage the property tax. $800 million. And so we could change that whole thing out by eliminating property tax and coming up with a different method, because property tax is just a method of collecting tax, and have more transparency, more accountability in the system.
Yes, please.
So what we've got coming up on the end of the program. So my rant is over. By the way, Mr. Matthew Heberbrand is going to be here talking about redistricting tomorrow, and the Supreme Court ruling on redistricting.
Oh, Hippobrand is coming back on. Okay, good to know. Mark your calendar for tomorrow and join the conversation. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Again, today you've been listening to Voice of Geauga. We'll see you tomorrow morning.